Some call them beautiful, some call them bizarre. To me, they are the ultimate algae-eating fish, something I find essential to my plant tanks, and I'm going to tell you all about it in just a second. Hey YouTube, this is PecTech, and when I first started the aquarium hobby, I was looking for a fish to kind of help clean the algae off the glass and the plants and other things, and I started looking into plecos. Now, as a beginning hobbyist wandering through the PetSmart, I of course came across the common pleco. I can't stress this enough, unless you have a really enormous tank, you do not want this fish. These things are tank busters. The common plecostomus gets really large, they're really heavy waste producers, and they are not appropriate for most of your tanks. You guys that like the tank busting fish, that need really huge fish, that's the one for you, but most people are going to end up either killing it or having to return it to a fish store because it just got too large. The common pleco is really easy to breed, and there are tons and tons of them out on the market for very cheap, and that's why you see them everywhere. It's not because they're appropriate, it's not because they're the fish for you or they're great at eating algae. There's just a lot of them out there. But on the other side, you've got the Bristlenose pleco, which is the Ancistrus species. There are actually a lot of varieties of these fish within the Ancistrus species, but there are a few that are really common and readily available at most good fish stores. The Bristlenose sort of distinguishes itself by having these odontodes, or I've heard them called tentacles on a couple of websites, that come out of their face, and this is generally with the males. Now, a lot of what I've read too says the females can have little small ones kind of around the lips and stuff, but the males will usually have these large odontode sort of tentacle horn things coming out of their face. This to me makes them look really interesting. I mean, just completely badass with those horns and stuff. Now, some of them have just a tremendous amount. Mine actually doesn't have all that many, but I've seen some that have just their whole front of their face covered. They almost look like antlers because they branch out. They also seem to have these spiky odontodes in their gill plates. I think that's right. Kind of like. I've found them to be pretty long-lived. A lot of stuff online said you could expect a lifespan of like 5 or 6 years, but the one I have downstairs I know I've had for at least 8 years. And the one I've had the longest, I'm pretty sure is a female. The only spikes I see from her are really around her nose and of course on the gill plates. And those mostly come out to kind of help encourage people to get out of her way while she's looking for food. Alright, so let's talk water parameters. These guys are really versatile. They can take kind of a lower pH, like in the 6.5 range, all the way up to maybe 7.5. They can take a little bit harder water. They seem to be really versatile. The species is from the Amazon River, and they're actually found in all different kind of territories around the Amazon River. Now, as far as water temperature goes, they really prefer it to be between 70 and 80 degrees. They can go a little bit higher and a little bit lower, but you're going to have the best luck in that range. Now, there are a couple of reasons why I really prefer this over any of the other plecos out there. One, they're really interesting looking. They're just really cool looking to me. Two, they stay small. Probably the maximum size you'll ever see one of these would get maybe 6 inches, but I think more commonly it'd be 4.5, 5 inches. Pretty small. Wide, but small. 3, they're not super demanding as far as water parameters and that sort of thing, and they're pretty actually versatile with what they eat as well. Now, as far as tank size, of course, when they're small, you can keep them in the smaller tanks, like the 10-gallon tanks, maybe even a 5-gallon to kind of get them started. But as they get bigger, you're probably going to move towards the 20 and 30-gallon tank range. Even though they don't get very large, they do produce a fair amount of waste. Their guts are really long. This is an adaptation that's meant to take care of their vegetarian diet. So although they don't get very large, they do produce a lot of waste, and that would kind of account for the larger tank size. It just makes it easier to maintain. Also on their diet, now they don't eat wood, but they do rasp on wood and they ingest small parts of it. See, they don't generally get enough fiber from the vegetables and things that they eat, and they require a little bit of extra wood to kind of help move things on through that gut. In fact, most people that have kept them agree that it's essential to keep at least a little bit of wood in the tank for for them to rasp on to help digest their food. As far as food goes, they are primarily vegetarians, but they do eat lots of other things, and they'll eat a typical omnivore type diet. Live foods and things like that are important to include if you're trying to breed your fish and you want to kind of gut load them and prepare them for breeding. You might want to increase the protein in their diet. They will eat the fish food and other things that float down, but it's also important that you supplement their diet with a good quality algae wafer. If you look at the ingredients on the back of a lot of commercially available algae wafers, you'll find that they're mainly fish meal and a mismatch of other things. That being said, if you look hard enough, there is a few foods out there that make good supplements. An interesting note that the Sarah representative mentioned to me when I met him at the customer appreciation sale last weekend is that the wood that they actually chew on is not allowed in the United States. It's this kind of willow wood or something like that. And because of that, they actually include that in their food. Whatever food you choose, just be sure to read the back to make sure you're getting some algae in there and it's not all just the other stuff. They'll also readily take blanched vegetables like cucumbers and green beans and things like that, and lots of people feed their fish that. They are safe for planted tanks, which is another great bonus. I never see them uprooting anything or sucking on something to the point where it's just destroyed. These are great fish for a community aquarium. They're not terribly aggressive towards other fish, and when they are, it rarely results in any kind of damage. I tend to only keep one Bristlenose in a tank. One, I didn't want to accidentally start breeding them. Apparently they breed really easily, unlike cichlids that kind of have to like each other. If there's a male and a female underwater together, they're eventually going to have babies. At least that's what I've been told. And when they do get going, they breed like guppies. I mean, they're just going to pump out more and more of these tiny little fish. And the process goes something like this. The male takes over a cave or some other kind of territory, cleans it up. The female comes by and says, "Hey, that's a nice place." She will lay eggs in there. The male fertilizes them and then runs the female out. Then the male will guard the eggs for a few days. I think it's like 4 or 5 days until they hatch. After they hatch, the babies all kind of hang around inside the cave and absorb their yolk sac. The male will stay and guard those babies until they all leave the cave. And that's it. Within a couple of weeks, you got a bunch of babies. A lot of local fish stores will readily take these babies because they can resell them for a decent amount of money, and they're really easy to get rid of in your fish clubs and friends and stuff like that. That being said, these guys can have hundreds and hundreds of children, so if you're not prepared to kind of deal with that, think about keeping just one. Even one Bristlenose can make a huge impact on the amount of algae on your glass and around the tank. They are constantly eating. At night, they are all over that tank, going back and forth, eating all the algae they can. There's a really wide variety of colors for these things too. The more common ones are sort of this brown and sort of a calico kind of coloration. I fell in love with these guys as soon as I saw them at my local fish store. They've got a pair in there that continuously breeds, and they make some of the most gorgeous little yellowfish I've ever seen. In fact, I was just there today, and the male's already guarding another clutch of eggs. Another variety I think is really interesting is a sort of long-fin Bristlenose, which I think are pretty cool. I've had these before, and they get really stunning the older they get. I had my eye on these at the store, but I just don't have space for it right now. Story of my life. Folks, that's all I got for you today. I'm going to go clean my tanks because next week is the All Aquarium update. Yes, that's right. It's been 6 months. I do an update of every aquarium I own every 6 months just to kind of keep you guys up to date on what each one looks like and the progress that I've made. So that's coming up next week. But until then, follow your bliss, check out some Bristlenose, and I'll see you soon. Another variety I think is really interesting is the longfin Bristlenose, the longfin Bristlenose. They're monsters. The common if you're preparing